live in an era of some of the fastest paced change that humanity has ever seen. If you're feeling a little bit unsettled these days, this might be at least part of the problem. And in large part, the kind of pace of change that we face into is driven by technology. In fact, the word technology has kind of only really found its modern use in the last couple of hundred years. So this is all kind of quite new to us as the human race. For thousands and thousands of years, progress for humanity was quite slow. Every 1,000 years or so, somebody would invent a new tool, and then this new tool would enable them to work a bit better. So, you got things like the Bronze Age or the Iron Age, and most of these were, like I say, tools, which are things that still require humans to do things, but they make the job a little bit easier. And it's said to be that it was around the time where the steam engine was invented, which was in the kind of mid-18th century, where things actually began to accelerate. We moved from tools to machines. So we moved from things that required a person to operate them to things that could operate on their own steam, if you pardon the pun. And so this was radical because labor was no longer tied directly to the time that you could give it, the energy that you could give it. We visited, when we were on holiday earlier in the summer, a heavy horse farm. And it's now turned into basically a museum because, of course, heavy horses used to be the lifeblood of farming and agriculture, pulling plows through fields. And they had these giant horses there who are basically just there now as a museum. Because it wasn't that long ago that horses used to do all the plowing in our fields. And they still had video footage of farmers with these kind of plows and all of that. But since we've had these steam engine, there's been an acceleration of inventions. Just as a little chart we'll put up, you won't be able to read all of this. But I had to cut off the beginning part, which is thousands and thousands of years, where every so often a little invention would come. And then we get to about 1800, we get the steam locomotive, we get photography, telegraph, the telephone, electric light, automobile, fertilizer, antibiotics, first computers. All of that is just in very recent history, and it has radically reshaped our world in the last 100 years. If you found someone who was born 100 years ago and they saw the world today, it would be completely different to the world they grew up in. We've only had computers for 70 years and personal computers in our homes for only 40 years. The widespread usage of the internet for 30 years and widespread usage of smartphones for only 15 years. Yet whenever the internet breaks or we lose our phones, disaster. Many people will suggest that 2007, when the iPhone was first introduced to the world, will be looked back on by historians as one of those pivotal moments in history, one of those inflection points. Now we stand currently on the precipice of a brand new technology which is about to reshape the world, AI, or artificial intelligence. And we're barely just beginning to adjust to the previous changes, and we're now on to the next changes. But why are we talking about this in church, and why are we talking about it now? Well, last question first. Why now? I think that our culture and our society is at a really pivotal point in this new introduction of AI and artificial intelligence and the way we adopt technology. So I think talking about it now is really important. In some ways, when things like the smartphone and social media came into play, we didn't really have the conversations up front about what this technology might mean for society, for culture, for our lives. Whereas there's an opportunity right now to actually talk about it as things are coming in. So that's why now. And why does this conversation matter in church? You might be asking. What's this got to do with faith and religion and the way we live? Well, we can't escape it. Technology affects culture, and culture changes the way that we all live. And just because you follow Jesus doesn't mean you're unaffected by the world in which we live. The heart of our faith is to have connection with Jesus and to be formed into his image. But the reality of our world is it can produce disconnection from Jesus, and it can deform us into different people. And so the deepest need that you might face into might not be some deep prayer need or some spiritual battle that you're currently in. It might actually be the device in your pocket right now, making you more anxious or more distracted. That might be the biggest challenge that we face today. And of course, these newer AI technologies are raising even bigger questions for us as humanity. If we let these machines do things for us, who's morally responsible if something goes wrong? Can we produce machines that are the same as humans? What are the moral implications of doing something like that or pursuing something like that? Is it okay if we replace humans with machines? Can a machine ever become conscious? These are all big questions for which most people do not have answers. And the reason that this gets to the heart of spirituality is because a lot of these questions touch at the heart of what it means to be human. And guess what? The Bible has quite a lot to say about what it means to be human. So we're starting a new series today, and we're going to try and explore this. Today we're not diving into AI specifically. We're going to kind of look a little bit of how things have shaped in the last little while before we start to look ahead at some of the changes that are coming. But I want us in this series to avoid two pitfalls that I see happening at the moment, particularly in terms of like AI and the new things. And I put it on the screen here. The first is fear. I don't know if you sense the fear in the atmosphere of like, oh my goodness, this is doom and gloom. The robots are going to take over. The world is coming to an end. And the reason that this is attractive right now is because it sells newspapers, it gets eyeballs, talking about how dramatically everything is going to go downhill and we're all going to die, apparently is the sort of thing that draws our attention. But throwing our hands in the air in panic is hardly a Jesus response in this moment. But on the other hand, is this kind of belief, which surprisingly enough is pushed by many of the technology companies, which is that if we just push ahead full steam, everything will work out just fine. We're heading towards some sort of technology AI utopia, so don't worry, everything's going to be all right. I think there's a healthier kind of middle ground here where we look at technology, we think about it, and we apply it to our lives today and think about faith. So strap in, here we go. I'm going to try and talk to you as though you know nothing about some of these things. So don't worry if you're thinking, I know nothing about these things. I want to try and find a level that we can explain things and just really simply look at some of the issues in our culture. Some of it you might think, oh, this doesn't directly apply to me. Well, I guarantee you it applies to someone in the room, and it applies to the people in your lives, whether that's grandchildren or friends or family or whatever it might be. But before we dive into AI, I want us to kind of zoom back and talk about our relationship with technology in the last 10 years as a culture. And today's focus is this simple idea, that there is a battle for our attention. My assertion today is that what we give our attention to really, really, really matters. I don't want to overstate it, but I believe our attention changes the quality of our lives. What you give your attention to really matters. And just before we go any further, I want to anchor us in this scripture. We're in Philippians 4, verse 8. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Easier said than done, right? But this is the spiritual imperative we're given here. And we're going to return to reflect on how some of these changes interact with our faith in a bit. But let me just... and for those who are obviously aware of this, this is the history. This is how we got where we are today. Okay, so first picture. We've got the widespread availability of the internet, which kicks off in the 90s. Found some lovely old pictures there. And what the internet did was it suddenly made information available everywhere. You know, if you think back to, I can remember the days before the internet, don't worry. If you think back to the days before the internet, if you wanted to know something, you had to find someone who knew about it, or you had to dig through a library, find a book, and actually do like a serious amount of research to get the information. Suddenly with the internet, we could just get it instantly. And before, obviously, the printing press, it was even harder to get information. You had to go and find the scroll wherever they kept them, in caves or whatever it was. But it's hard to even comprehend the amount of information each of us is given every single day now compared to someone 100 years ago. Like, it's hard to even come up with a comparison. I've seen various comparisons of people trying to describe the difference in the amount of information we have today versus someone 100 years ago. It used to be the local newspaper or the wireless. That was your options. Once a day, you would check in and find out what was happening in the world. And you'd find out 3 days later when a war started, or you'd find out a week later when the telegram or whatever, the post arrived. But now we're bombarded, and within 30 seconds, I guarantee you could probably find out about any piece of information in the world in 30 seconds. So the internet made information really cheap and freely available. But when one thing becomes really available and overloaded, another thing becomes really scarce. That's just the way the world works. And so when information became an overload, the next thing is that there became a battle for our attention. So now it's not just there's information everywhere, but the fight becomes, how can I get you to look at my information? That becomes the battle. Who's going to be the one that decides what information we see? And there's a whole new economy developed in the last 10, 15 years called the attention economy. I don't know if you've heard of it. The attention economy is basically an entire industry which is designed to get your eyeballs on something. Now, we see this most commonly through adverts. We're being advertised to all the time now. But it's not just through adverts. There's people trying to get you to look at their piece of content, their piece of writing, their slant on the news all the time. There's a battle for your attention. And of course, we had the internet, but then social media. I've got to go to the next slide. This is a nice old picture of Mark Zuckerberg, who seems to increasingly look more and more like a robot with every passing week. But this was the early days of social media. And social media became a platform in which all of this just took off to a new scale. Because not only could they give you lots of information, they could gather all your information and use it to advertise to you. They now knew what you liked, they knew who you liked, they knew who you were in relationship with, they knew the kind of interest you had. And that made it even easier for them to sell exactly what you needed in the moment that you need it. You always have to remember, if the service is free, then you're the product. If the service is free, then you're the product. So when you sign up for something and it's free, it's because they're using you. You're actually the product in this situation. And that's what social media has been. They can give you exactly the right ad that you want in the right moment. And we all know how scary good this is. I'm sure we've all had examples of times where you're talking about something and then you look at your phone and you're like, wait a minute. I was just looking at that. I was just talking about that the other day. And some of it, is all these sort of conspiracies about they're all listening to us. I actually think most of it is that we're much more predictable than we think. I don't know about you, but I like to think I'm unique and my thought processes are unique and nobody could ever guess what I would ever want in the world. But in reality, it turns out when you've got big money, you can pay the best psychologists in the world to tell them about what you're most likely to need. And so it turns out if you buy garden furniture 3 years ago, there's a good chance you're going to need some varnish or some oil for it in 3 years' time. Or whatever it might be, they know in advance what you're likely to want to buy at certain times. And so we've called this the algorithm, which is obviously a phrase that gets thrown around a lot. But the algorithm is basically the computer's best guess at what it thinks you need. The computer's best guess. And that began very rudimentary with psychologists trying to help and guess. It's now become AI learning systems that learn about your behavior to give you the right ad. And this has gone even further in the last few years, if you were not aware. So social media is no longer social. All the platforms have changed now. Whether you're on social media or not, this is important to know. Facebook, Instagram, all of these things began as ways to share with your friends. They're no longer that. They're now just the algorithm telling you what you might like next. If you use any of these platforms, you'll know you no longer see your friends. You see whatever they want you to see. And the reason they do that is because they've realized, yeah, you're quite interested in your friends, but you're more interested in this funny cat video. And they've discovered that actually that our brains can be hacked, and that they can keep us on the platform for longer, and therefore they can give us more advertising. If I sound cynical, it's because I am. And this is the reality in which we live. And it sounds quite challenging, but the reality is there is a full-scale battle for our attention today. There is a battle going on. People are spending a lot of money to get your eyeballs on something. And it goes beyond social media as well. It could be, if you shop, if you're going to the grocery shop, you've got a rewards point. I'm afraid you're also being tracked in these similar ways. If you use banking apps, again, you're being tracked in the same ways. There's a whole range of ways. If you're using Netflix or Prime or Disney Plus, again, they're tracking all your likes, your wants, your desires, so they can give you the next thing. So if you were not aware, there's a battle going on for your attention today. And it's exhausting. And the more that our lives move online, the more information they have to be able to sell things to us. Now, it might seem obvious to you, but why is this a concern? Why is this a problem? Well, I have a hypothesis, which is easy for me to say, for you today. And it's quite simple, really. And it's just this, that worship begins with attention. Attention is really just how we engage our hearts and our minds and our souls in something. Where you put your time, your energy, and your money is how you worship. Where you put your time, your energy, and your money is how you worship. The average person in Britain spends 3 hours and 21 minutes on their phone per day. And that's the average. The younger you are in the demographics, the higher that number goes. Where we put our time and our energy and our money is how we worship. There's a Christian artist I discovered recently called Josiah Quinn, himself a 22-year-old, writing songs like this into his generation. We'll put the lyrics up here. A song called Dusty Bibles. The chorus goes, "We've got dust on our Bibles, brand new iPhones. No wonder why we feel this way. We walk with our eyes closed, blind leading blind folks. And I'm done with those idols and dusty Bibles." This is a 22-year-old speaking into a culture that's starting to go, what? Is it any surprise if all our time and our money and our energy are going into phones that we're facing a spiritual crisis? Where we put our time, our energy, and our money is how we worship. I haven't read this book, but it's a fascinating title from 2021, Distracting Ourselves to Death. How to find purpose in a bewildering digital world. This is the reality that people are facing into. Whether you feel it, people around us are feeling this right now. Where we put our time, our energy, and our money is how we worship. Worship is more than the songs we sing here on a Sunday. We know that. In Romans 12, Paul says, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship." So worship is really about offering everything we have back to God. And it begins with our attention. What are we giving our attention to? Are we turning our attention to Jesus? Because when Jesus was asked what's the greatest commandment, what did he say? He said to love your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, heart with all your soul and with all your mind. With everything, focus everything on your love for God. What you think about, your emotions, who you are, your will, everything focused in on God. Give God every part of you. But in our culture, let's be honest, that has never been harder. I felt so challenged this week in preparing this. I was just like, oh, the problem with preaching is that it humbles you every single time. Because you have to stand up and tell people things that God says, and then you go, oh, he's saying it to me as well. Oh. So I don't exclude myself from these challenges at all, by any means. I mean, can you imagine the irony of sitting down to write a talk on putting your attention back on God and feeling completely distracted all morning with everything but the thing that you're supposed to be sitting down and doing? But I believe our worship does begin with our attention. So what are you giving your attention to? What is occupying your heart and your mind each day and each week? For me, if I'm honest, it's far too many things. I don't know if, like me, you long for a slightly simpler life. Anyone else just long for a simpler life? But in the absence of my call to a monastery, I'm trying to figure out how we live in the midst of this culture, in this moment, where I'm busy and scattered and distracted. And it's important I say, like, the last thing I'm interested in today is legalism, some sort of new kind of like legalism we need to bring to the church. I'm actually looking for this life and this peace that Jesus talked about. You know, when he said that his burden was light, I'm like, sign me up for that. Because often life doesn't feel like that. I want that peace. That's what I'm chasing after. And according to Jesus, the maximum human flourishing is found when we love God with all our heart, soul, and mind. The Bible is full of the call to set our hearts and mind on God. And here's just a few scriptures just as an example. The one we looked at earlier. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. There's an invitation to set our thinking patterns on certain things. What's good for us. Colossians 3:1. Since then you've been raised with Christ. Set your hearts on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your mind on things above, not on earthly things. And then this one really struck me afresh recently, because I don't know if I'd seen this verse in this light. Proverbs 3. This was actually the verse Joe and I had read at our wedding. I love this. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. Now, it's that simple word, acknowledge. Some translations put submit, but it's to do with perceiving or attention, or where we put our focus and our energy. In all your ways, recognize him, perceive him, put him first, and the result is it's going to affect the path in front of you. When your acknowledgement of him, your recognition, your perception of him is in everything, it makes the path in front of you straight. That sounds pretty good to me. There's a call on us as followers of Jesus not to have our attention pulled left and right all the time, but to have ourselves focused. I'm always so struck by David's words in Psalm 27. One thing have I desired of the Lord, that I will seek after, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to behold the beauty of the Lord and to inquire in his temple. I don't know about you, but in a world of technology and social media and mobile phones and endless notifications and endless emails and to-do lists and never-ending things to do, I would love there to be one thing on my to-do list. And I'm challenged by David because he says one thing I ask. There's one thing, one priority. One thing I ask. Can you imagine only having one thing on your to-do list? One thing. And I don't think you arrive there by accident. I don't even think you arrive there by a prayer and a hope. I think you arrive there by intentionally looking at how we all live our lives. By having rhythms in place, by having structure in our lives that helps us in this direction and kind of protects us from some of the challenges of our culture. There are ways that we actually, throughout the days and the weeks, can force our attention back onto God. And what you're doing today is one of them. Being at church on a Sunday is one of the ways in which we have a weekly realignment. My attention's back on you, God. I'm sorry, throughout the week, my head's been all over here, and I've been thinking about this, and I've been worrying about that, but today, I'm back, and my attention's on you. What are some of the other things you could do? So let's get practical. I'm just going to give us 2 things to think through. And like I say, I'm in the trenches here with you. I don't offer these as answers that I've completely nailed, but things I'm processing and trying to learn from. It begins with, we actually have to recognize there is a battle. That's what I'm trying to wake us up to today, is that in this technological world, there's a battle for your attention. It's not neutral. When you step out of here, you're not on neutral ground. That all these companies and all of these industries are designed to try and get you to do certain things. And however technology might present itself, it's never neutral. Technology, of course, can be used for good and bad. I wouldn't want to paint the picture that all technology is bad. That is not what I'm saying to you today. But there is a discernment process that's needed. There's always an agenda. Do you know, like Google, the biggest curator of all searches on the internet, let me tell you, it has agendas. It might claim no agendas, but it decides what you see in your search results. And even that's gone now. It's now AI telling you what you wanted. But there's an agenda. ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever flavor, they all have a bias, a leaning, an agenda. Let's not pretend they're neutral. So when you step out, there's a million things shouting for your attention. And the reality of kind of recognizing you're in a battle is that you are more warned. Like if you know you're in a battle, you behave differently than when you're in peace times. When you're in peace times, you can just wander around freely without a thought or a care. But when you realize there's a battle, you have to have a strategy. You have to have a plan, which is our next thing here. And again, I'm not trying to prescribe a plan for you, but I suggest that we all need a plan. There needs to be a plan on how we're going to thrive in the world that we find ourselves in. If you don't have a battle plan, you're going to be disorganized, you're going to get ambushed left and right. And so here's some of the things that I'm attempting. And one of them is really just simply about how I protect my peace. Become aware of when you lose your peace. Become aware of when you feel disturbed, when you've become anxious, and run back and go, what was it that caused that for me? And learn to say no to things. Develop your focus. Learn to actually, can I do a task and focus on it for 20 minutes? Does anyone feel more distracted than they did 10 years ago? More easily distracted all the time? Like, could I sit down and do something for 10 minutes without doing anything else? For some people, that's a real challenge. What is it that helps you find your focus? We need to kind of train ourselves. I think focus is almost like the superpower of our age. If you can focus on something for long enough, consistently enough, you'll see improvement. And then on the screen, I've got a bunch of stuff for technology hygiene. We have hygiene in all sorts of other areas of our lives. We have things that we say, better practice, good practice. And there are things with technology that make our lives healthier. And again, this isn't like a prescription. Everyone has to do all of these things. But I think there are ways we need to handle technology so that it doesn't handle us. There are things we have to be in control and say yes to this, no to that. And you need to find the recipe that works for you, because again, it's not one size fits all. But if I could encourage you anything, it'd be like, turn off all the nonsense notifications on your phone. Turn them off. You decide when you want to know about something rather than when whatever has decided you should know. So maybe you want to leave on your text messages, I don't know, or maybe you want to leave on your phone calls, but turn everything else off, because guess what? All of those notifications are designed to pop up at just the point to pull you back in. You know, the actual timing of these notifications is worked out. You might get a notification at 3 o'clock, but the algorithm decides that it'd be better to show it to you in 10 minutes later. This isn't by accident. This is deliberate. They're provoking you to come back into their world. So I encourage people to turn off notifications on their phones. Limit screen times. Again, we're aware of this, particularly for kids. We're like, we need to limit how much screen time they have. But I think it applies to all of us. I always look in horror whenever I look at, how long did I spend on my phone last week? And you think, all the other things I could have been doing. No phones in bedrooms, I think, is always a great policy. It just means it's not the first thing in the morning and the last thing at night that you're interacting with. I'm not looking at anyone because we're all guilty of these things. But apparently, like 80% of people, the first thing they do in the morning is pick up their phone and check their notifications. So having the phone in a different room is just another kind of way of saying, there are other things I'll get to you. I'll get to you later. So I don't do this, but I have talked about maybe doing this. Having a phone bedtime. Putting your phone to bed before you go to bed. Like having a curfew for your phone. Phone goes to bed at 9 o'clock. I go to bed at 10 o'clock. I've got an hour without this device. Other things that I haven't mentioned here related would be like, just sometimes leave your phone at home. This is radical in our culture, isn't it? Leave your phone at home and go and do something. Take your bank card or whatever if you need. But like, go for a walk without your phone. Because it's bizarre that we have to say these things, but isn't it true? Like we go to leave the house and we're like, where's the phone? Where's the phone? We're trying to find the phone. Like, you lose your phone, you get this anxiety, like, where's the phone? And it's like, I think these are all signs that maybe it's running us rather than us controlling it. And then finally, don't feed the beast, which is a bit interesting, but like, always reject cookies on websites unless you have to. Don't click on adverts. All of these things, again, are feeding information about who you are, and so I'm like, don't feed the beast. Don't feed the beast. These are just some things that I try to do. And then on the positive side of things, think about what positive habits you can put in place as well. If the average person spends 3.5 hours on their phone a day, what if you reduced that by 30 minutes and went for a walk with God and just said, God, me and you, 30 minutes? Do you know, it's got to be the negative and the positive. And then thinking about what rhythms help you realign to God. Now, there's the obvious stuff like, it's always great for people to spend daily time reading the Bible or praying with God. And that looks different for different people. But what is the rhythm that helps you? Some people do like an afternoon prayer thing where they do daily offices or whatever, where it's like they pray the Lord's Prayer in the afternoon. I think I've told you before, I've got a reminder that pops up on my phone at 2 p.m. every day, and I'm not allowed to swipe it away unless I take a moment to acknowledge the Lord is with me and enjoy his presence. And so I'm trying to hack the technology to help me. But what are the rhythms in your life that bring your attention back to God? It could be small group, it could be Sunday worship, it could be daily prayer. But we need these anchors that bring us back, our attention back onto God. So today is really just an introduction to this topic, but I want to begin with this because I think at the heart of all this technology is it's trying to grab our attention. It's trying to align us to spend more time with it, to buy more things, to see more things, to research more things, to get distracted down rabbit holes, to watch more videos, whatever it might be. And we just need to be aware and have a plan. Because our worship begins with our attention. The things you're giving your attention to lead you towards worship. As we explore technology and its impact on our lives, we need to realize that our highest goal has to be flourishing as followers of Jesus. That's going to be the first thing, that we love God and love him with everything in our being. The things that take our attention are either forming us or deforming us. That's the reality. Everything that takes your attention is forming us or deforming us. And as technology gets more and more advanced, they become even better at grabbing our attention and do it. So turn off the notifications, leave your phone behind, and spend some time with the living God of the universe. That's my basic challenge for us today. Spend time with the one who loves you, who's changing you, and making you more full of peace, more full of joy, more full of grace. Doesn't that sound lovely? So what will you give your attention to this week? That's the simple question. What will you give your attention to this week? Next week, we're gonna move on to talk about technology and relationships and the promise of connection that technology offers us. But let me just pray for us today as we think about our attention and our focus in the culture we live in. So Lord, I pray right now that you would, in a healthy way, come and convict us where we need conviction. And I pray you would raise up in us a desire, like David, who wasn't praying out of obligation, that one thing we ask, that we would actually just realize that life is not found in so many of these things, but life is found in you. And I pray this would be a week where you stir up our passion to be with you and to know you and to be in your word and to spend time being formed into the likeness of your Son. So, Father, we know that we're struggling and we're challenged in our world, but I pray we would become a people with our attention on you. Amen.